And just like that, we're live. Woo! So, good morning, everyone. I know that you're coming to us at a super early time on a cold Thursday morning. So really appreciate everyone that's kind of turning up today. Hope you've all got your hot beverages, your coffees, your teas, whatever takes your fancy. My name is Corey. I am one of the project executives at Beatfreeks. You won't really see too much of me after the start of this, to be honest. I'm kind of doing some tech stuff. So if anyone's having any issues with sound or anything like that, let us know, and I'll run through essentially how you can use Livestorm, because we won't be able to hear or see you. So the only people you're going to hear and see today are going to be the lovely Beatfreeks team, and then all of the amazing panelists and young disruptors that we've got. It's a proper treat. Like, you're in for a genuinely like a really good treat today. But as you can see, Rebecca's already typing. But on the right hand side of your screen, you'll have a little chat column. So you just essentially want to use that to be communicating with each other, with us, typing your thoughts and whatnot. Let us know what the crack is, how you're feeling. Let us know what you're drinking today. If it is, how do you have your coffee? What tea are you drinking? Rebecca's got a nice cuppa and some toast. If you've got food, let us know what food you've got. You've also got a little questions tab next to that. So if you do have any questions for any of the panelists or any of the young disruptors, you feel free to whack them in there. You can also use the chat as well for that. That's kind of everything from me. If anyone is having any issues, do let us know, because we want to make sure that everyone has as good an experience as possible throughout this next hour, because as I said, it's an absolute treat. So I am going to leave you with the lovely Amy, so she can get cracking with the fun stuff, because I was just running through all the boring stuff essentially. But no, yeah. So enjoy the rest of the session, and as I said, use the chat function if anyone needs me. So I'll be here.
Thank you, Corey. Welcome, everyone, to the launch of the eagerly awaited National Youth Trends. I'm Amy. I'm the Commercial Director at Beatfreeks. Thank you all so much for coming. We're really genuinely, as you can probably tell, very excited about what's going to be a really fun and really insightful event. And I wanted to give a little special shout out as well to some of our amazing current subscribers who are here on this call today. So to kick us off, I wanted to tell you a bit about Beatfreeks, the agency that's behind this insights platform. So we are Beatfreeks. We're an insight-led engagement agency that specializes in scaling brand relevance through young and diverse audiences aged 16 to 35. We're youthful, we're independent, creative, and very much like the young disruptors we work with, we're really hopeful for a better future. And our clients very often feel the same. They want to work with us because they want to become relentlessly relevant and future-proofed. So we exist to get our clients the understanding and engagement they need to scale their relevance with the audiences they haven't met yet. So how do we do this, I hear you ask? So we deliver our work across 3 key service areas and a subscription product, National Youth Trends. So we deliver research and insight to help clients understand young people through both quantitative and qualitative research, as well as some creative methodologies as well. We also deliver consultancy and training, so really helping organizations apply that data to strategy and to planning. And we also deliver activation and creative services, so really bringing those ideas and strategies to life through campaigns, events, and programs. So what about National Youth Trends? This is a project actually and a product that's been very much a long time in the making. It started in 2017 as a Birmingham piece of research called Brum Youth Trends. So we'd really identified that there was a lot of research that looked at specific issues that young people face, but we couldn't really see anything that looked at a young person's kind of experience much more holistically and really asked public, private, and third sector to all play a role in making that change happen. So this soon became a national piece of research, and the initial report under this national remit was the first of its kind, looking at the impact of COVID on young people in April 2020, so really early on. We're now taking everything that we learned to create an insight platform that will offer you access to the mood of now. Rich primary quant and qual research, as well as our own expert responses to secondary data that we've read and spotted the gaps that National Youth Trends can fill. I now want to share a little bit more about the platform with a really beautiful video. So Corey, cue the video, please.
No one can afford to stand still with the pace of change right now.
National Youth Trends provides the data and insights you need to understand 16 to 35-year-olds as citizens, workers and consumers, so you can scale your relevance.
A subscription offering you exclusive access to the mood of now through visualized data, stories, and specialist interviews to bring you the hottest takes and uncover the most interesting insight gaps impacting businesses and brands currently.
Access the mood of now. Useful insights from real people on all things youth, pop, and subculture.
Sign up now at beatfreaksyouthtrends.com.
Oh, so exciting. So why is listening to young people important? So over 50% of the world's population is under the age of 30. 30% of the world's population is Gen Z. All of Gen Alpha are going to be born by 2025, and young millennials have got the most spending power of any generation. And as our first National Youth Trends subscribers, you've got an opportunity to be pioneers. Bring your feedback and ideas so that we can continue to evolve this platform with and for you. This insight-led approach is really key to all of our work across the board, and so this project is absolutely no different. So how can you get involved? There are a couple of subscription packages and options. So we have the trending package, which gives you full access for you and all of your team to the mood of now via an interactive insights platform. There's absolutely no cap on how many logins that you can create, as long as they're all from within your business. And then you've also got an option of attending a quarterly event with a live panel of young disruptors every single quarter, where you can really ask them your burning questions, as well as a bi-weekly what's hot and what's not newsletter straight into your inbox. And this package is just £5,000 per year. We also have the Inside Track package. So you get all of the above, plus an annual bespoke training for you and your team. So whether you want to know how to engage young people through TikTok or how to better attract young talent, we'll carve out something fun, interactive, and insightful for you and all of your team. You also get an exclusive rate card on other Beatfreeks services, and you get 1 day per month with one of our amazing futurists to help you turn these insights into planning, pull out content that's going to be most useful to you, cut the data, and so much more. So before I hand over to our incredible hosts and panel, I wanted to let you know that today we're offering you all 10% off on your first year of subscription. So whether that's the trending package of £5,000 a year or the Inside Track package at £25,000 a year, either of those offers 10% off for your first year of subscription if you sign up today. So just put your full name in the chat if you are interested in signing up with that 10% off, and we'll keep a record of your name, and we'll be in touch very, very soon to organize that with you. So without further ado, I'd like to bring on the amazing Cara and Jen.
Good morning, everyone. Great to have you here.
Good morning. Good morning. Hi, everybody. I'm just checking I'm being heard okay. But welcome. Thank you, Amy, for that brilliant introduction. My name is Cara, and I am a futurist here at Beatfreeks. So my role covers people, places, and culture. And I've also been working to develop and deliver national youth trends with the team. And I'm joined by Jen.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Cara. I'm Jen. I'm the Managing Director at Beatfreeks, and I'm very, very excited to introduce you to some of the real stars of today's event. First of all, we're joined by our brilliant industry panel, and I'd love you to say hello to Jack Abry, BEM, who is Head of Youth Engagement at WWF, Emily Nix, Digital Marketing Manager at Citizens Advice, Kaz Nichols, Campaign Lead for the England and Wales Cricket Board, Lucy Percival, retailer at Lush Handmade Cosmetics, Karma Booth, Strategic Commissioning Lead at Birmingham City Council, and Joseph Nwozu, Marketer and Financial Coach. Some great names there, and each of our panel has been selected to join us today based on their experiences of working with Youth Voice and Insight, alongside their vision when it comes to what might be possible when we embrace youth voice in business.
So we categorise our thinking across national youth trends by holding up a spotlight to young disruptors as citizens, workers and consumers. So when we talk about citizens, that's be that of a town, a city or country, and that's both globally and digitally. And when we talk about workers, we're thinking about there's the generations that are just starting out or taking the reins in a multitude of environments. And as consumers, that's day-to-day purchases to bigger thinking around products and homes and investments. So today we'll be calling on our panel as we talk through the relevance revolution. That's how listening to young people as citizens, workers and consumers can scale your brand relevance.
And we're also joined, I'm very excited to say, by two brilliant young disruptors, which, by the way, is a term that we've coined to describe the youthful game changers who are creating and experiencing firsthand the trends and movements that are changing the world. We've got Amelia and Hassan with us today, who I must confess aren't strangers to Beatfreeks. Amelia has been involved in a 3-year program that we delivered with Google.org and YouTube called Be Internet Citizens. And Hassan's previously been involved in a transformational arts funding program called As We Speak that Beatfreeks delivered. And I'm very pleased to say he's now our Insights Manager at Beatfreeks. So welcome to you both as well. Really excited to have you with us this morning. And to kick us off, perhaps we could hear from our young disruptors about an example of something that you both believe makes a brand relevant for you.
One moment while I think we get everybody on the screen.
Hey, Hassan.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Hi, Hassan.
I think what makes a brand relevant to me is kind of the concept of humanity and just showing that they're kind of open to communication and they're kind of clear and transparent. And then I can then follow that brand on its journey, and it's like a two-way thing for me.
Love that. Thank you so much. And hopefully in just a moment, we've got Amelia joining us too, and we can hear from her. Is there a brand you think is doing that really well right now, Hassan?
I think off the top of my head, what comes to mind is Timberland, because Timberland have this thing where whenever a shoe sold, so many trees are planted.
Nice.
And it's like, and it's published in their thing, and they speak about it quite a lot online, and it's like, oh, okay. And I quite enjoy that.
That socially responsible aspect of being a consumer brand. Nice.
Brilliant. Good morning, Kaz.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Here we are, our brilliant panel joining us now this morning. Just give a moment. Whilst everybody's joining, I will keep us moving. So thinking about the brilliant response that Hassan just had. So starting with Lush, could you tell us about a successful campaign or moment with your company that's come out of youth voice or insight, and why you'd say having that younger perspective is important, and also how you might have embedded that into your company ecosystem?
Yeah, great question. And hello, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me to be part of the panel today. So just with campaigns, I'm going to start with a little bit of context. Lush is a campaigning company, and normally how we run campaigns comes through 2 channels. So we run campaigns around animal rights, human rights and environmental issues. And that's either driven by amazing small grassroots organisations coming to us from outside the world of Lush and saying, we've got this message that we want to get out there. We've got this campaign issue we want to raise. And we're in a fortunate position as a global business to have the windows and shops and in high streets and shopping centres, and also the online presence that we can hand that over to the campaigning group. But actually, to answer your question, Cara, I'm going to talk about another way that campaigns come into Lush, which is internally. Because it was interesting hearing the statistics at the start that Amy was sharing, because actually in Lush, 82% of the people that work within the retail parts of the business are in that 16 to 35 age group. So when we hear voice coming internally about campaigns they want to run, it's definitely driven by what you've described, that youth voice. One that comes particularly to mind, and I'm aware that there's a lot to fit in, so I'll try not to talk too pacily about it, but it's actually the work that we've done around campaigns around mental health and the impact mental health from social media. So we heard from internally that this was a message that staff wanted to talk about mental health in general, what impacts it negatively, what we can do positively to help our mental health. And then we also then had the opportunity to collaborate with I Am Whole on their Digital Detox Day in 2020 in September. And the youth voice internally definitely led to us driving that collaboration, basically, and us wanting to do that. But then also through that collaboration, it made us as a business much more aware of the impact of social media, say, on mental health. And it meant that when the Facebook files were published by a whistleblower, we took that information and really listened to it and realised that there are actually some platforms that at the moment we didn't feel comfortable being on as a safe space. So that's just an example of internally how the youth voice has driven that. I've got another example, but in the essence of time, I'm just going to talk about that one for now. But you had some great follow-up questions there, Cara, as well.
I do, yes. I mean, the fact that you've spoken about how you took what was going on in the outside world and feedback that people are getting, and you embedded that into your company culture for your internal comms, that really is essentially how we're looking at national youth trends and the work we do at Beatfreeks as being essential to every area of business and organisations across various sectors. So I'll throw it over to you, Jack, at WWF. How are you managing campaigns, and what can you share with us?
Thanks, Cara. Morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Jack, Head of Youth Engagement at WWF. The Youth Engagement team here is brand new, so we're only 7 months old, not individually, but as a team. So the three of us now are helping to look after directly our engagement with 13 to 17. So for us, having the views, the opinions, and the voices of young people right at the heart of our work is going to be absolutely crucial if we're going to achieve our mission and solve the nature and climate crises. Young people are going to be inheriting our planet in whatever shape that is, and they're our world leaders of tomorrow. And for us, it's about listening to their voices and putting them in the driving seat, but we're not placing the burden on their shoulders. We're not expecting young people to go and fix everything. Businesses, politicians, decision makers, and power holders have such a huge part to play. And for us, it's about helping connect those youth voices to those decision makers, power holders of today. So we're currently working with our youth ambassadors, our fantastic young people, and we're also collaborating with young people across the sector. That's so important for us. It's not doing things in silo. It's working with amazing organisations like the RSPB and National Trust, who I know are here today. And we're working on some really exciting new partnerships and projects. Now, a lot of those are currently under wraps, so I can't give too much away, but some of the things that I want to draw out. We're meeting young people where they're at, so we're not expecting them to come to us. We're going to them, and we're putting our effort into making sure we're reaching out to those diverse communities where they are and not expecting people to come to us. We're supporting those diverse voices in any way that they need and listening to them and asking them directly what they need from us and not assuming. It's about, for us, giving those young people the chance to explore, to experiment, to fail and to get things wrong. So actually not expecting everything to be perfect and giving them that freedom to be able to come up with ideas, pursue those ideas, and see where we go with them. For me, it's a really big one about being open and honest. So actually, when things go well, be really open and honest about that. But when we're not able to use particular insight, or we're not able to pursue a particular idea, whether that's because of budget or time resource, whatever that might be, being really open and honest with those young people and just being clear about why that's happening. And the final one for me, having done a lot of this when I was as younger as well, always following up on that insight and that feedback, that input from young people, letting young people know what's happened because of it, why it's happened, as I've said, or why not. Final couple of things for me. That youth voice, having it really central to everything that we do, make sure that we're working authentically with and for young people. So we're not doing stuff on their behalf, we're doing stuff genuinely co-creating it with them in the driving seat. And it's about that double benefit. So how can they get the best skills development, the best experiences they can, whilst helping us to take action on those two crises that I mentioned at the start. Broader than what we do in the youth engagement team, trying to have young people sitting on not just youth engagement projects and works, but things like the finance team, the science team, sitting and being a core part of what we do and how we operate as an organisation, whether that's at the start of project initiation documents as a key stakeholder to have spoken to, making sure that we're looking for those really strategic ways to embed. And a final thing, really, we're currently recruiting for even more youth voice. So we have 2 amazing opportunities available for 26 young people between the ages of 13 and 18 to join now. So we're trying to do even more of that. And if anyone would like to know more, then you've got my name. Please do drop me a message. But a bit of a shameless plug for trying to get as many young people as we can to apply for those roles. And I know we're conscious of time. So that is all from me.
Thank you, Jack. I think that leads us very nicely into our next section, which is impact. Over to you, Jen.
Thanks, Cara. And thanks, Jack, too. Great to hear you talk about so much of your approach and how well it aligns with our philosophy as well, particularly that kind of value exchange piece with young people. Amazing and very inspiring. Thank you for sharing, and love the shameless plug too. So, Kaz, I'm going to be directing this next question at you. And obviously, the first professional 100 tournament burst onto the cricket scene in 2021 as a new format that's kind of reimagining cricket for both new and existing fans. But when you're thinking about audience development and engaging new fans, particularly that kind of 16 to 35-year-old age group, what do you think has had the biggest impact for you around kind of growing that audience? And what is the relationship for you between audience development and relevance?
Yeah, thanks, Jen, and hi, everyone. Yeah, as kind of everyone introduced at the beginning, kind of I work for the England and Wales Cricket Board, and my role is campaign comms lead. And a big part of that is working and developing and facilitating new audiences into the game. But actually, to expand on something that Jack said, I'm very much in agreement of listening. So actually, the biggest impact for us on growth isn't actually the delivery part. Of course, that's really important in ensuring that the experience meets the expectation, but actually it's the stage before. So it's the audience research. So really investing that time pre, during and post to understand the audience and making sure that it's meeting their experience and their needs. But also something else that Jack mentioned was don't make assumptions on their behalf. I think particularly within comms and particularly within campaigns, there's a fair few amount of creatives within us. And I think it's resisting that temptation to go straight through to the creative and all the ideas and thinking they'll love this and this will really resonate. And actually it's stopping and listening to that first phase of listening, testing and challenging yourself. And I think that kind of leads into your second point, Jen, around kind of audience development and relevance, because for us, it's about being authentic and showing up in the way that's relatable to the audience, but in all ways of that. And it's not just making that assumption that that ticks the box and that will do. One example of that is a project we delivered last year for the 100, which saw, don't know if anyone saw it, but we developed a unique cricket stadium experience in Minecraft, and it was entirely designed by young people. And to my earlier point about research, that idea was entirely grounded in the insight that gaming is what engages a large percentage of our youth audience. So it was not only relevant to them, but it was actually relevant to a lot of the audience, and it just gave us that talkability. But again, it's a perfect example of it was really easy for us to jump straight to the creative and the ideation without taking a step back and using it to ground the insight, but then also testing that it was going to be relevant.
God, what a fantastic answer. Also love myself a bit of Minecraft every now and again. Thank you so much, Kaz. That's amazing. And Amelia, I want to come to you now. Welcome. And thank you for joining us this morning. So obviously you've been part of a project previously with Beatfreeks. And, you know, in terms of your involvement as a young disruptor in that process, kind of, did that have any impact on you or your views of the world at that time?
Hi everyone, I'd like to apologise for my technical difficulties earlier. Like Jen said, I was a part of a project with Beatfreeks. I definitely think it made me more aware of performative campaigns from brands particularly. I think we looked a lot at internet safety and kind of having that authentic voice and like where that comes from. I think definitely through the project through Beatfreeks, I then actually moved into working in social media where I do help with campaigns with brands as well. And I think a lot of people have already kind of hit the nail on the head where it's all about getting the right tone of voice and actually going to the young people, the source as well. I think for me, like a successful campaign in particular, I like actually hearing from young people who are passionate about the subject, not necessarily like kind of a figurehead, and seeing where they lead that creative as well. And I think that's where I probably most resonated in recent years with like successful campaigns.
That's fab. Thank you so much, Amelia. I think, yeah, that hearing directly from young people who are engaged in something is yeah, really a great place to start. And Hassan, I'm going to come to you as well on this in terms of your experience as a young disruptor, but working so closely with research and insight. Yeah, is there anything you want to share with us around sort of that relevance point and authenticity?
I think what's interesting is that a lot of my approach echoes what Jack and Kaz have been speaking about. And I think what's interesting for me is when I'm kind of deep in all of this kind of research and data, I need to remember that I've got my young disruptor hat on, but also my researcher hat on. And then it's interesting not to assume a certain trend or assume a certain thing because I'm so close to it, but rather to like wait, stop, and kind of work through what's there, and then like kind of have a conversation wearing the two hats at the same time, if that makes sense. And for me, that's what's interesting, to kind of pick and weave the stories out through my own personal experiences and my own kind of communications and on the ground kind of talks with like people of similar or younger age, and then kind of seeing what is the kind of general mood and the kind of overall feeling of the young disruptors that we have been working with. So it's quite interesting to see how they align and sit with each other, and it's been quite fun in a weird way to kind of see the kind of links or any differences that I can draw out.
That's amazing, and also tricky balance to wear those two hats, and so you do a great job. Thank you to our two young disruptors there, and thanks Kaz as well. So I'm going to move us into our next section, which is kind of around challenges, and at Beatfreeks, we work with young disruptors every day, and we're no strangers to the wonders of what that can bring. It comes with some wonderful wins, unleashed creativity, some tricky conversations, and some occasional curveballs. But I'd really love to know from the panel, what sort of challenges have you uncovered when you've been working with Youth Insight to develop your strategies and campaigns, services or products, and maybe what have you learned personally from your work with young disruptors? And I'd love to come to you on this, Karma, and hear about your experience.
Morning all. So I was implementing the 0 to 25. So that was a brand new mental health service in Birmingham. So quite a few years back. And actually we as officers almost put a cap on children and young people's views in terms of what we thought that they wanted. So we was very focused on community support and some of the issues which Lucy was talking about in terms of emotional well-being. But actually we put in a really random question: should we include inpatient care? So those people who are really at the high end of requiring mental health support. And actually the results were quite resounding. Young people were telling us that we needed to include inpatient care up to 25 years old. They thought it was really important because we understood the cliff edge that young people face in terms of those who were really, really unwell and needed additional support and how they transition back into the community. It was a bit of a curveball for us because we knew it was going to be very, very complicated. The way the structure was set up in terms of where the beds sat within our commissioned arrangements made it very, very complicated. And it's almost, how do you reduce beds from one organisation if they're not successful and then put it into another organisation? So it actually created a lot of disruption. What we were doing was being very authentic and listening to young people's voice and picking up on the points that Lucy, Kaz and Jack has talked about in terms of how you truly engage young people. But I guess the curveball was we didn't manage the expectation, because in reality, if we told them how difficult it would be, they might have said, no, don't include it. But at the same time, it was a very useful exercise. The reality is we had to make it happen, because we wanted to be authentic, we wanted to hear their voice, wanted to make sure that young people knew that they could implement service change. And equally, they also came up with a very dynamic model, which was to have a drop-in emotional wellbeing support. And we still see that in Birmingham today, which is pause. So in that, it made me as a strategic commissioner really flip the script in what I thought about young people and how they engage. And at the same time, we also created a very dynamic process where we awarded them specific allocation of points in terms of decision making, and they sat around that decision making table. And what we do know is young people can keep secrets. So where there was reluctance from executive leadership to say young people shouldn't be in that space, in fact, the decision was never leaked. They knew for 2 months more than lots of people did, and actually was able to maintain integrity to the process. And that was through really great training and supporting them and leaning into where they were at. So it's about, for me, we will always have curveballs, but it's about how we manage it. How do we lean into young people, and how do we work collectively? Because they have the ability to rationalise, they have the ability to give us really good insight to really shift and change service delivery, so it's relevant for them. Hope that helps.
What a fantastic answer, and thank you for sharing that experience with us, Karma. I know you've done lots of amazing work in that space, so yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to move on a tiny bit now just to talk a little about young disruptors as consumers. We know that they're kind of one of the savviest audiences that brands have to contend with, from needing to make sure that brands' sustainability creds are top-notch, to being purpose-led, to delivering great value for money against a backdrop of a cost of living crisis right now. And so thinking about social media and the rise of the infamous TikTok as a search engine, I wondered what opportunities and challenges you think think brands have, particularly on social platforms right now? And Emily, I'd love to bring you in on this one.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. So I actually think the video that was shown at the start really sums it up, both challenges and opportunities on social media. Like, no one can afford to stand still at the rate of change, and that is so true across social media and the way that it's constantly changing. And that is honestly one of the biggest challenges I think that social media teams face, but actually also one of the biggest opportunities. And I think particularly things like TikTok have really given brands the opportunity to sort of push the limits with their brands and the boundaries of what they're doing. And it's been such a shift away from sort of like really highly produced content to really lo-fi authentic videos. It's actually been I think that's been a really great opportunity. And I've worked in social media for a long time now, and one of my biggest bugbears is when people say, oh, can you make it go viral? But actually TikTok has, honestly, it's never been easier to go viral. And I hate to say it, but at Citizens Advice, one of our most successful videos was around reading your energy meter, and it got seen over 1.8 million times. And that is just beyond the reach that we would get across any other platforms. And I think that's a really huge kind of opportunity for brands to reach huge audiences in a really authentic way. But obviously it is such a shift away, I think, across all platforms, not just TikTok, away from that really highly produced content. And I know for a lot of organizations, it's a huge culture shift from spending like weeks producing a video to sort of spending 10 minutes. And the other kind of biggest challenge that I kind of see a lot of brands facing is around kind of like sign off and trust within the kind of the people doing the doing. So, you know, on TikTok in particular, there's not time to go through really long-winded sign off processes going really high kind of up the chain. So I think that has a huge challenge and sort of like limits kind of can limit brands. But I think if brands are able to push through that, not only is there this really great opportunity to engage with young people in a way that young people want to be engaged with, and that is really key, there's also a huge commercial opportunity. So like Jen just said, but you know, we've seen things like book talk. You know, I personally read 5 books last year that I never would have read, but TikTok literally made me read them and really enjoyed them. I've seen stands in Superdrug and seen stands in Boots that are literally called As Seen on TikTok, with like different products that are viral and going and trending and stuff. So I think if brands are able to really kind of push through those challenges and really kind of move away from maybe what they've traditionally done on social media, just endless opportunities both to engage with people but also commercially.
Thanks so much, Emily. That's so insightful. You've had some great experience in this space. You talked a lot about authenticity there and that kind of more raw approach. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of, you know, that traditional marketing sign off, you know, brands giving over their visual appearance and identity into more raw formats. That is definitely a space that, yeah, I feel is going to be changing quite a lot over the next year. Thank you so much for that answer. And I'm going to ask one more question. Joseph, I'm going to bring you in for this one. We're on this kind of social media chat, so I'll keep it here. In terms of investing in influencer marketing, we've actually seen a bit more of a shift over the last kind of 12 months to more user-generated content and that kind of more raw, authentic approach that Emily's described really well. I wondered from your point of view, how you think that sits alongside sort of a more traditional review platform and word of mouth as an effective way for brands to sort of scale their relevance.
It's interesting. I don't think a word of mouth has massively shifted or changed. It's just the platforms vary. It used to be handwritten letters, and then it was, or people to people. The Avon lady, when I was a kid, advising my mum on whatever she was about to buy. And it's just the platform that shifted. And what companies need to really bear in mind is that your advocates have always been at scale. You just weren't always aware of them. They just weren't always able to have the scale that would allow you to recognize them, because a company with 100,000 customers or 1 million customers has 100,000 or 1 million people talking about them. You just don't always hear them. Nowadays, we can hear them. And from a brand perspective, it's understanding how you empower people to do that. So technically you set up, and are you actively using the ways in which people are communicating to the reviews? Or to provide feedback. So I'm waiting for a lot more companies to shift away from asking me for an email review rather than a text message review, because I should be able to respond as a text because it's just quicker, and the review will say the same thing and come back to me in the exact same way and be just as useful. So changing the platforms to where people are is what's happening. The way in which reviews and recommendations, whether they be through public influencers or individual influencers, will continue to be the same, because people will not stop being people. The technology just shifts, and we need to adapt to that and enable people to be able to continue to do what they've always done.
Thanks so much, Joseph. Yeah, great insight from you there. Cara, handing back to you.
Thank you. And excellent choice of words, thinking about what you already have. And one of our greatest assets is our workforce. And we know that this is one of the most unique in history. And we also know that retirement age is creeping up. So it isn't uncommon to see members of 4 and in sometimes 5 generations in the same workspace. So you can end up with employees with 20, 30 years of experience alongside young disruptors who are fresh out of school and uni working together. So one of the areas that we are keen at looking at too is how we can improve multi-generational communication in the workplace. So I will throw it back to you again, Joseph. How do you think organisations can improve on that?
I think it's understanding the common threads and not condescending in either direction, because people think you can only condescend to younger people. But my mum uses YouTube all the time to get like health recommendations, and she's in her 60s, right? And I'm sure there's people up and down the spectrum using the internet, using technology in ways that we generally don't assume that they are. But the average age of a TikTok user isn't 12, right? But there's significantly older people on TikTok as well as really young people. So I think it's finding the connecting tissue between what's happening at various stages and pulling in people, because people are experiencing it in different ways. Cost of living is hitting young people the same way it's hitting older people. No matter how much you make, no matter how much life you've seen, you're experiencing these macro trends in the same way. And I think bridging the gap through focusing on the topic rather than the audience will attract the people who will engage. And a 60-year-old and a 22-year-old will be seeing the same thing, maybe from different angles, but have very similar pain points. So I think focusing on the topic rather than the audience will pull the people who it's most relevant to.
Great answer. May I also throw that to young disruptor Amelia? Any thoughts on that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question for me?
Sure. How do you think we can improve multi-generational and intergenerational communication at work?
Well, that's a good question. I think the place I work I'm at, majority of us are Gen Z, but we also have people who are millennials and like further generations as well. I think some of it might come down to the recruitment process as well. That sounds very strange, but for me, like the reason I was aware of the place where I worked at was through social media itself. That could even be like job listings on TikTok. That sounds very strange, but that's something that is possible through Instagram and Facebook. It's kind of also like just seeing where you can spread the word. I think because there is so much on the regular kind of like job searching websites, a lot of things can be lost. But also kind of seeing the faces that work in a company can also draw in different generations too, I find. I definitely think for me, when I saw that it was a place that was very inclusive in particular, that I was more like drawn to actually press the application button. And I've seen probably the company I'm at currently grow like rapidly in the last few months. And a lot of people coming in saying, oh, it's because I saw you on TikTok that I was interested in seeing the place that you work. And like, I've seen that it like kind of helps all kind of generations to work towards one kind of similar goal. So I think that's it for me.
That's great. Thank you. I think there's lots of food for thought there. And I think extremely relevant point around how we acknowledge that there are lots of different voices on lots of different platforms, and intersectionality again is something that we're exploring at Beatfreeks and as part of National Youth Trends. And I'm really excited to see throughout 2023 how that develops as a concept across lots of different organisations. But before we open the floor for questions, I'm going to ask everybody, what would be your #1 piece of must-do advice for brands and organisations who want to scale their relevance with 16 to 35s this year? So let's start with Hassan.
I think for me, again, it's echoing what Kaz and Jack said like early on, and it's about actively listening and actively taking the time, and then it's not just about the listening, but more about, okay, what happens after the listening. So it's like listening and action. So that's two things. Sorry, I cheated, but it's, yeah, listening and action are the two things that I think are most important.
Brilliant. And Jack?
Yeah, definitely going back to what I said earlier about working with and for young people. So don't just ask what young people can do for you and your brand, but what can you and your brand do for young people? What are those skills that you can help them develop that nobody else can, and how can you help to do that and really invest in them? Because that double benefit is where you get amazing development on both sides. You get young people who are developing amazing skills, and then they're able to really help drive your brand relevance because you've invested in them. So it's not about that one way, it's about that double benefit for me.
Brilliant. Over to you, Lucy.
Yeah, just to actually echo what Hassan just said and what Kaz and Jack said earlier, I think listening to understand and keeping in your head to always be flexible and adapt to those things based on what you've heard would be my bit of advice.
Brilliant. Karma?
Mine would be create an authentic connection. It's about relationship. And if you've got to create an authentic connection, you can move mountains. You can really explore the impossibilities. So create an authentic connection.
Brilliant. Emily?
Yeah, mine would be about not being afraid to kind of try new things and kind of push the boundaries a little bit. I think it's important.
Joseph?
Not to disagree with Emily, but my thinking is more in line of understanding who you are first before you step out into the world. Because, for example, I was not a great dancer before TikTok came out. I'm not about to jump on every dance because TikTok's now out. As a brand, as a company, understanding where your strengths are and leaning into those, because I'm better at talking than dancing. So I'll do a reaction video to a dance, but you won't catch me doing the dance. So it's understanding how you can participate and picking the trends that best suit your brand and your company, rather than trying to be everything to everyone and just coming off cringe.
No one wants to be cringe. Kaz?
Cara, I think Kaz for some reason can't hear you, so I'm just letting you know. Kaz, we'd love your take on this.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I echo everything that everyone said. I think one piece of practical advice that I think organisations don't do enough of, but has limitless opportunities, is growth, is reverse mentoring. So providing that environment for perhaps a younger member of an organisation or a disruptor to share their experience with someone that may be less familiar in an organisation, because I think that not only allows education, but it also perhaps provides the permission and an environment where you can challenge, question, or broaden your horizon in a facilitated environment. And I think it's a powerful tool that will enable that scale and kind of reflect lots of things that we've talked about today in terms of listening and that action point, which Hassan, I think, is really valid. But I think it, particularly where we've got organisations of multi-generational, I think it brings everyone together.
Absolutely. Amelia, do you have anything to add to this as well?
Yeah, my first thing would be like not to presume you necessarily know what young people want. And the other thing being, if you were to go onto TikTok and you don't feel comfortable doing certain things, I definitely think you don't have to go for the macro influencers. Look for those micro influencers who are passionate about their niches, and let them create the content for you, because through that you're going to have authenticity and you're going to have kind of an audience that they already have that can bring them to your brand as well.
Excellent point. And I would just say that is something that we are extremely passionate about at Beatfreeks and National Youth Trends, is making sure that the voices that aren't always at the front are centered, heard, and, as everybody said all morning, listened to. So just as a quick reminder, in case anybody needs to jump off, we are offering a 10% offer to anyone who signs up today. So pop your details and emoji in the chat and we can be in touch to get you signed up. But we are going to move into the exciting Q&A section this morning, which I'm looking forward to seeing where we go with our brilliant panel. So we have our first question. When it comes to gathering youth insights, what have been the most successful ways you have found for speaking to and gathering insights from young people? Would anyone like to jump in on that first?
I've got a little bit of experience here. To be honest, it's paying them. To pay them like the professional subject matter experts they actually are, and you'll be surprised how willing people are to give their time when you're willing to invest in them and building those networks with the places where they're at. So there's no point putting it in a local newspaper if your demo doesn't read the local newspaper. Speak to schools, speak to colleges, speak to the environments where these people are, and actively say, no, this is work experience, this is real money, and we would love to hear from you because you're an expert. That's what's worked for me at the various companies I've been at.
Brilliant. I think we have two models there at Beatfreeks. So we have our associates who are paid a fee for their work, but we also have our Access Bursary, which helps support young people to take part in research, whether that is traveling to where we need to be or getting themselves to even where they are usually outside of their usual hours. But our bursary fund is there and available to support young disruptors to take part in active role in the work that we do for them and you. And does anyone else have anything they'd like to add on that question? Great. I can see lots popping up there. So Roberta has asked, along the same line of reverse mentoring, are there any other suggestions from speakers on how to promote youth voices within a complex organisation or company?
I'm happy to jump in.
Go for it, Jack.
Thank you. Roberta and Jamie will know me from some of the work anyway, so they're probably sick of hearing me say things like this. But for me, one of the things that I'm looking at doing here at WWF is about embedding those youth voices or those opportunities for young people to feed in directly into your current and standard like project management, the really boring stuff that you have to do whenever you kick off, whenever you do a business case or a project initiation document. You've got that list of, has it been to finance, has it been here, has it been there? Having those really strategic conversations that actually young people are a key audience, can we have them on that checklist so that everything that goes through that impacts young people in some way, shape or form, of which will be pretty much everything, can we have them as a key stakeholder that we've got to consult? Because then that's just helping me not have to be in every single call with every single team across the organization being like, there's so many projects going on, I can't keep a handle on everything. It's about how can we bake some of that into everyone's thinking so that it becomes initially maybe one of those things is like, oh, I've got another person to speak to, but then when they start to see those insights coming in and they start to be more in that world, it's a really nice one for me to bake it into that process. I think the only sort of caveat I'd say to that is can't do that without some really good support around the outside. It's not an overnight fix. Just putting them on a checklist doesn't mean that that it'll go well. You've got to train and upskill the organization and the staff that are going to be doing that to be able to work with young people in the best way. Otherwise, what you'll get is young people having terrible experiences with people just having to get them ticked off in a box. So it's about way more than it just being there, but that's a good start to the process. Get it on people's minds and then upskill staff across the organization that are going to be doing that to see the benefit and bring them into some of those great conversations you're already having, help them to be able to hold those conversations with young people in a really authentic way and get their voice and their insight into those projects.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask, with change can often be some resistance. Has anybody got any tips or tools as to how you might bring everybody along on that journey?
I think one of the challenges we have is that people forget that they were children and young people, and I think that that's one thing that we can actually all bring people back to the centre of, is we've all had an experience of childhood, and in that then brings that relationship again in terms of how you're connecting with somebody. So I think for me, my biggest hook is we all know children and young people, we all were children and young people, so let's start seeing life through that lens, and that starts to create a slightly different conversation.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on that? I have another question here. So we've talked a lot about going to where young people are and really listening. What other tools are you using to connect with your communities and really know what's going on out there? Open to anyone.
I'm just about in the demographic now, so I found that by going to events and just connecting with people, making friends who are 10 years younger than me at different life stages, to sort of see the world from their lens and see the boldness and confidence. Because I didn't realize when I started to get afraid again and start turning into being more like my dad than these younger guys, the younger people I'm talking to. So actively trying to build meaningful relationships in your day to day, and accepting that you may be the old person at the table, but that there's value in that to them as well. Um, so I've got a particular friend, he's like 23, 24, and he's asking me about what it's like to be married, but I'm asking him about what it's like to be dating now, because I was early on Tinder. He doesn't even use it. So it's what's the differences now, and understanding the world through their eyes in day-to-day ways.
Brilliant. Open to the floor.
I want to see if Kaz would like to comment on this one. So around kind of what tools you're using to connect and engage with communities right now. Anything you want to add in?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I think a couple of ways. One is, and I think Karma mentioned it earlier, or Hassan, but also kind of looking at things like WhatsApp and looking at the tools where the audience is and using that to understand their behaviours, but also things like focus groups. I don't think we can underestimate the value of spending face-to-face time and really investing in that piece of activity to get under the skin of how they behave, what they're looking for, how it resonates, etc. So I think both technology elements, which I think are really, really important, but also those face-to-face interactions.
That's great. Thank you, Kaz. I think really, really key in terms of what we do at Beatfreeks is getting the context that sits behind some of the data and stats that are out there. And you mentioned WhatsApp. There's a particular tool and technique that we use called WhatsApp diaries to help us understand young disruptors better, which is quite an innovative kind of qual method that we use. And I think, yeah, you're right, exactly that conversation and understanding the feelings is hopefully what we're going to be delivering with National Youth Trends.
Great. And on that note, great question from Giles. Panel, have you ever had any challenges engaging young people on a particular project? And if so, how have you overcome it?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that. So when we kind of identified young people, and we use young people as like 16 to 25, which is obviously a little bit older than I know some of the rest of the panel, we did a lot of that, like just assuming what young people wanted. And I think we kind of did all the things that like organizations would traditionally do to like engage with younger audiences. And it wasn't actually until we took kind of a bit of stock and we went to some events, and we even just with kind of, well, predominantly 18 to 25s across our organization, actually asked them how do they want to what advice do they need, how do they want to get that advice, what channels, what kind of how would they like to what sort of language and things like that. Actually, once we spoke to actual young people, then we kind of have had a lot more success. I think, although the majority, unfortunately not myself, but the majority of my team are 25 and under, or were at the time. So we kind of felt that we knew what young people wanted. Actually, when you kind of multiply that to like speaking to all young people, it became really difficult. So actually, yeah, I think once we actually did like those focus groups and that Kaz just mentioned and things like that, we've had a lot more success in engaging with that age group.
Cool. Anybody else? Okay, there is a question for me here from Joseph. What do I think is next? So in 10 years, what will the world be like when Gen Z are leaders in the workplace? So fortunately for me, I've spent a brilliant amount of time on our deep dive National Youth Trends topic, the future of work. And not to give away too many spoilers, that's what the subscription's for. But definitely, as you've all mentioned, listening is really important. And I'll give you a key takeaway. Gen Z and millennials, 16 to 35s, are currently really tuned in to what is happening around them. They have absolutely no choice in the information age. So be prepared to take on the challenges. So as these people step into leadership, they are already calling for everybody to have a seat at the table. So that intergenerational voice, for inclusivity, and for real action. Those are my takeaways, and how we will evolve over the next 10 years. But of course, Gen Alpha are hot on the heels. So who knows what curveballs we might get along the way there. But that is where I would say we are hurtling towards the end. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to the panel before I ask one final question. Just before I do, is anybody in the chat, is there anything? Everything's popping off now. So I'm going to go to a quick question from Tom. For organisations with smaller or limited budgets, what would you consider effective ways to incentivise and attract young people to give insight and share their views? Tom would love to find creative solutions for limited resources. Maybe one of our, yeah, go for it.
I think partnership works really well. Because I worked with charities at a previous company. So I worked at Experian previously. And what we did really well was that we partnered with local charities and we would do financial education sessions with them, which was a service that the charities or schools themselves couldn't offer. But that also allowed us to have an audience. So finding what you can provide in exchange to your target audience or to the gatekeepers of your target audience, it could unlock a lot of opportunity for you, Tom.
That's a great answer.
I think I can probably jump in here from our perspective as well. I think in addition to kind of incentivizing things, I think giving the voice to the audience, to the youth audience, is really powerful. And I don't think we should underestimate the contribution that they can bring to those discussions. So actually making them feel that they've got a seat at the table and they have a valid role to play, I think can be really powerful, particularly given the influence and the authenticity piece that we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. I don't think we have time for another question. So massive thank you to everybody for being with us this morning, everybody watching, our current subscribers. And again, if anybody is interested in the offer, 10%, please pop your details in and we'll be more than happy to get in touch with you. Yeah, I wish you all a wonderful chilly Thursday. I'm Cara, this is Jen, and this has been our panel. Welcome to the launch of National Youth Trends. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, everyone.